Hey, welcome back to Jason Unleashed. Happy Wednesday, you guys. What's going on? Jason Carter here. Great to see you. Thank you so much for watching. Great show today. Great show every day, but even a more spectacular show today because my guest is three-time Emmy nominee, journalist, writer, and all-around incredible woman from Variety magazine. Angelique Jackson is in the building, fresh off her illuminating article in Variety magazine called "The State of Black in Hollywood." This conversation is going to be incredible. It's much needed. So let's bring Angelique in. She just came into the room. Angelique Jackson. Uh, uh, Hey.
Hi.
Good morning. That was your song. I have a song for everyone, and that was yours. It was kind
I
of
love it.
I was an amalgamation of like some throwback R&B and Pretty Young Thing from Michael Jackson. I don't know if you could tell.
Ooh, yes. I love that song.
Thank you for being here. Welcome to Jason Unleashed. I am so excited to talk to you. One, because I love and adore you. You're an incredible woman. But the work you are doing is so essential, so crucial, and just impeccable. I mean, there's a list of other accolades I could bestow upon you, but those are coming to mind off the top. But first, to
Oh.
start with, how are you doing in quarantine?
I'm good, and thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here and to be here with you. As I'm sure like a few people know, obviously we've gotten to do this on camera thing before at our past job. So this is really awesome to see you doing so amazing and having all these great conversations. I'm so honored
Thank
to
you.
be part of this list of hosts. It's
Thank
awesome.
you. Reunited and it feels so good, girl. Reunited. Feels
Yes,
so good.
sir.
You've been busy. You've been busy in quarantine. You've been writing. You've been connecting. You've been speaking to the masses. Your experience. Are you? Do you feel refreshed, or do you feel like you worked harder now than you ever have before in your life?
Yes, I definitely feel like this time in quarantine has been incredibly hard with all the working. My dog is over here wanting to join our conversation.
Bring
I'm
her
about
in.
to
Bring
be
her
like,
in.
Layla, do you want to be a part of this? I don't know. That's kind of been the biggest thing of quarantine is figuring out, do I put her on the patio? Do I put her in the bathroom?
I
What do
know.
you
Same.
do when you're doing these live interviews? So I feel for all the parents out there. It's so cute watching their kids like pop in, but like my dog child is just as aggressive. But this has been such an interesting period of work because we had started out just trying to like fill the time and just make things exciting, and it's been great because we've had wonderful access to celebrities because they're
Mhm.
home. They're more interested and they don't have to do the whole hair and makeup
Right.
situation. They're just able to just like pop on like us, so it's really casual and it's been really cool. We launched this series called the Variety After Show, which we partnered with National Geographic for. So that has been incredible. We had guests like Sterling K. Brown and Viola Davis and Deborah Messing, all talking about their shows after they aired. And it's been a great like innovation. But like
Hmm.
you said, it means that we've been incredibly busy.
Right.
And then as the Black Lives Matter movement has
Mhm.
gained so much very important traction, that has led us into like a completely different lane and
Mhm.
given us more ability to have these deeper conversations because we're in a moment. I feel like you and I, feel this way too. We're in a moment where everybody is no longer afraid to talk. I know you
Right.
also spoke with the great Miss Amber Riley
I did.
about Unmutiny and
Yeah.
and that end of Black silence. Like we are
Hmm.
in a moment now where Black people, Black hosts, Black entertainers are just speaking our truth in a way that like has never been done before. And I feel like also in a way where like we didn't feel comfortable doing before
Right.
because there was so much
Yes.
fear of
Right.
it, fear of what would happen to you if you did.
Absolutely, 100%. That's so on the money. And Amber Riley was someone who you guys had the opportunity to talk to in the article, "The State of Black in Hollywood," which was this illuminating and I mean, it was a bombshell of a read that dropped. You and another variety journalist, Elaine Low, another woman of color, as well as a contribution from Jazz Tanke. So on the money. You talked to. I'm sure there a myriad of different people were probably interviewed and brought in, excuse me, it's early,
Yeah.
brought in for this
No, it
article,
is.
but you spoke with Chen Dungy of Netflix, Amber Riley, Matthew Cherry, the genesis of that article. Take us through that because that's not something that you just decide, oh, one day we're going to write this piece on racism and inequality and white supremacy in Hollywood, there's probably many conversations leading up to the release of that. So what was that journey like for you as a writer, and also uncovering and unearthing these stories, healing from that? Because you yourself are a woman of color, you're thrust into this experience of all these different people, and you had to also reconcile a lot. So let's go back to the beginning. Tell us about that.
Well, so this all actually started in the days after Omar Jimenez was arrested. Elaine and I actually were already working on a story about the experience of Black journalists and journalists of color covering the protests, because that was something that spoke to both of us emotionally. Because, you know, while we are covering them from afar, we're also still dealing with it. You know, you're the way that a lot of people can turn off the news or turn off Twitter or social media and take a break. Our actual job is to be on it the entire time. So it's a very stressful experience and an emotional one. And when Omar Jimenez was arrested, that was a particularly tough day for me, just because I was like, now I really am dealing with this as a journalist too, because you're dealing with it as like a Black person, but then you see this journalist who's just doing his job being kept from doing his job, regardless of, you know, if the arrest was racially motivated or not. We all know what we think, but, you know, we can't say for sure as, you know, as journalists.
Right.
But because of that, we were like, let's investigate this more and let's start talking to journalists. So Elaine and I started working on the story, and we were joined by Audrey Yap and Jazz Tankay on that story as well. And we wrote this story called Reporting While Black. And it was this great look at just the way different journalists have been dealing with this, photojournalists, reporters on camera, and just the things that they're going through. And it kind of just evolved from there. While we were working on that story, the protests began to get larger here in Los Angeles, and we started to have the curfews. And on the day of the first curfews, I was watching Kendrick Sampson's Instagram Live. And I feel like obviously I've seen news coverage of the protests before and clashes between protesters and police, but there was something different about watching it live and having that real POV that really spoke to me.
Yes.
And also it was so gripping as the video, as just like watching video, but then also like terrifying, because all you can think of is, please do not let me watch this person die on camera.
I know.
And that was my concern the whole time. He was live for like more than 4 hours. And it was actually also incredible journalism. Yeah. It's really interesting to see how social media has played a role in the evolution of social media, has played a role in the way that we're covering these protests even more. You know, it's been escalating for years, but just like having that live feature,
the access,
game changer,
complete. It's that visceral access, Angelique, that you can. I think through the lens of television. Let's take it back to '92, Rodney King. Through the lens of television, something is lost, because the medium of television has this veil of inaccessibility, whereas social media is the nuance, the nooks and crannies of being there, and it's almost as if you can taste and feel and smell what is happening, and so the gift and the curse that is social media. But people have said the cell phone, Instagram, and Twitter have become the greatest weapons against racism and inequality in 2020. And I agree 100%. Continue.
Because all you got to do is just pull out that phone, and we should be, you know. It was actually what you're talking about with TV. It was amazing, because with Kendrick, you could watch him on CNN and watch from the point of view behind the police officers, and at the exact same time watch from his point of view. So you were actually getting both sides of the story for one of the first times that I feel like I've ever seen, at least live. And so it was an incredible moment, and we worked with him, and so we got involved in that way, in having a conversation with Kendrick. And it just kind of evolved from there. We knew that this was a conversation that needed to be had, and it was just figuring out how to have it. Because in terms of, you know, we can't boil down systemic racism into 3,000 words. Right. You know? Yes. And it's just like that fear of like, well, how do we attack this in a way that actually makes sense and is powerful and really, you know, gets to the heart of it. So in partnering with Elaine works a lot more on the business side. I work a lot more on the talent side. And we kind of broke it down where, you know, I spoke to more of the talent, she spoke to more of the executives. And we of course also just like spoke from our perspective, things that we know, that, because let's be honest, Jason, everyone's been talking about this for years and years and years and years and years.
Right.
this is not a new conversation. So we also didn't want to like retread a ton of old ground either. But so it was just like a complicated mess of also people. This is an emotional topic, and I don't know that everybody like was really gung ho to talk about it. So we had to like pick and choose and navigate who we were going to get and how we were going to get them and what was going to happen.
But I can imagine, like I said, there's probably interviews and comments and bits and pieces of people's testimonials that are left on the cutting room floor, because in 3,000 words, to be impactful, you have to be very judicious and decisive. Okay, what story are we going to tell from what perspective, and who do we enter to help drive that narrative forward? But successfully, Angelique, the cover story. That morning, I had at least like 20 tweets and like 4 emails and like 3 text messages. People like, did you read this story? Have you seen this? And then when I saw it was written by you and Elaine, I was just like, praise the Lord. But
Thank you.
You are writing history now. What is happening in 2020 to this point will go down in history.
Yeah.
And the term reckoning is what was used in the headline online for Variety. And choosing that was so appropriate, because that's exactly what's happening, is a reckoning. And for an institution like Variety that's 115 years old, that has had exclusive breaking stories from like Matt Lauer to Time's Up, and just so many things that have changed and caused conversation in the zeitgeist. For yourself, that feeling, what does it feel like to be a part of that?
It is a tremendous honor, and it felt like a huge responsibility. Elaine and I were very nervous as to how the story was going to be taken and how people were going to feel about it and reading it. But we also felt really, really galvanized and really supported by the fact that when we were doing the reporting, it's actually weird. Like, you would think it would have been a harder story to write, but as we were doing the reporting, people kept saying the same thing, and people like unprompted. Everybody was on the same page, because that's just the way it is. Like, we didn't have to try to find the story. The story was there. We just had to find the right people to help us tell it. And they couldn't have done an easier job. Like, it was like just things just falling into place. It was really magical. And for people to then resonate with it was even more powerful. And even just some of the things that were happening, the letters that that different celebrities and different groups and organizations, from the theater owners to what, Bill Power and Kendrick again did with Tessa Thompson and Black Lives Matter. The fact that like they were doing all the things that we were asking that we were asking about just naturally was incredible. It just made you feel the whole time like we were along the right path. And what we were saying is what is going on in the world and what we need to be talking about. And I'm so excited, because it's just the first of many stories. Like, we were looking at it as that. We're like, this is just the gateway. This is how we're going to get into the more detailed topics, because there's so many more elements that we have to get into.
I just got chills, and someone said, okay, I have all the chills. I feel you, Malpros. Because the story wrote itself. And I mean, not to get spiritual, a divine intervention.
We can get spiritual.
A divine intervention, Angelique, took place because when you have, I want to use the word corroborate is keeping it very layman, to have people be forthright and come in and just give of their experience and have it be consistent across the board. And then it's just like there was a divine hand in making sure this all came to fruition. And as you said, magically for the people. From that story, though, beyond the positive feedback that we've gotten, what else has come of this? Because, I mean, like you said, this is just one step in a movement forward. But what were you surprised? And we'll get back to that question. But were you surprised, or what did you learn that shocked you or surprised you in talking to these people that you didn't know that you didn't already know, or that you were like, wow, I had no idea of this perspective?
Yeah. I think the thing that resonated with me the most, and I'm not even sure if it surprised me, but resonated with me the most, was the fact that everyone is very cautiously optimistic. Like, I thought it was just me. Like, I thought I was the only one being like, how long is this going to last? Is this only going to be like a couple week thing? Or are we going to actually have the stamina to pull it off? And everyone was kind of along the same lines. We're all like, okay, like, is this going to continue? Is this going to be just like a couple tweets, kind of like we've always seen? I think I was mostly surprised with how forthright people were. I think that was probably the biggest surprise. Like, obviously we definitely had people who, you know, were working on other things or not comfortable speaking on this particular story or speaking yet. But the way that people were just so willing to be like, oh yeah, no, it's like, it's a problem, and it's been a problem, and I've said it's a problem, and nobody's done anything about it, was probably, I think we're just so used to getting answers that are very, not even rehearsed, but just like, you don't want to get too much into it because you're like, I don't want to ruffle feathers. I don't want to. Yeah, I think that was probably the biggest surprise.
The answers are very rehearsed, and let's keep it 100. When you, especially when you ask about, I mean, there's so many different areas in every business. I mean, outside of entertainment, these conversations are now having in every sector of business, from private to entertainment to political. And when you have the conversation of just marginalized groups of people and minorities and the whole gamut, when you ask about inclusivity or initiatives to engage and galvanize and mobilize these people, the answers are rehearsed. Oh, we need an executive sign off on that. Or
Exactly.
it's past the buck, and not in my backyard situation.
Yeah,
But
yeah. Everyone's like, well, we have a diversity and inclusion program, so like we're doing things.
right.
And this, everyone was willing to go beyond that. Like, they weren't criticizing that or saying that like we shouldn't have those, because it is a great tool. But it's like, everyone's like really willing to get real about like, that can't be it. Like, that can't be the only thing that we do. And, you know, we like you said, it's in every industry. Like, we're all dealing with this in journalism as well, and dealing with our own, you know, feelings and reckonings. And I have a tail just going behind me, but yeah,
So cute.
It really felt very unfiltered, and I thought that was cool. I just saw that in one of the comments that somebody said. I was like, it felt more than people just giving like the PC answer that they normally would. And also just like Netflix making someone like Channing Dungey available to us was a really huge moment. The fact that we were able to get someone so at the top of their game, who has been network and now streaming, was a huge interview. Elaine did that interview, and I thought it was a major coup for us to have, especially these Black women, in her and Tara Duncan, as like leading voices in this story. I thought that was really, really amazing. So I big thanks to them for that.
Yeah, Channing Dungey, I mean, from her time at ABC, moving to Netflix, she has always been a champion. I mean, look, Shonda Rhimes lauds her, always been a champion of not of course Black women, but just diversity in general. Let's pivot back to Amber Riley real quick, because I had the opportunity to talk to her as well about Unmutiny. And in the article, Amber, much like John Boyega, said, you know, I may not have a career after this for speaking up in London. And he was embraced by J.J. Abrams, Olivia Wilde, all these people that will be like, no, we're going to make sure you have a career. But Amber Riley in the article said, I'm good not having a career as long as it makes it easier for the generation next to be comfortable to move in these spaces. Natasha Alexis, I interviewed her yesterday. She said the same thing for the future. The repercussions, do we think that we're going to see less of that? And this is just my thought process, because people don't want to speak up, especially when you're talent in a business, because you're being bought by a buyer for your talent. And the talk track for people of color, especially women, is angry Black woman.
Yes.
Unapproachable, intimidating, bitchy Black woman. The list goes on and on. Do we think we're going to see a change in that behavior, or much like the Me Too movement, where when you call something out, the villains find a way to be more sinister, more covert, and find dirtier ways to enact their bad behavior? What do you think the behavior is going to be going forward? Are we going to make steps in regards to that retaliation?
I certainly hope so, because actually I'm glad you mentioned that too, because the one that really came up to me that both I believe, I'm not sure if it was Matthew or if it was Franklin Leonard, but one of the two of them and Amber both mentioned Monique. And if you look at the way we all, I mean, I was skeptical. I'll be the first to admit that I was kind of like, oh, you know, it just sounds like you didn't take her as seriously as we should have. Bottom line, we didn't listen to Monique enough. And I really appreciated that so many people pointed that out. And I hope that if that's just an example of how we have to be better this time around, and the idea that that's like 2 years ago,
Yeah.
like we're not talking about Monique speaking up and saying that she wasn't being properly compensated 10 years ago. We're talking about 2 years ago. So we can't let that happen again. We
Right.
can't let it become a joke. And I feel at the moment like that's not happening, or that's not going to happen. I feel like there is so much support and so much people galvanizing behind other people. Like you look at Gabrielle Union going toe to toe with NBC and Simon Cowell. That's not being taken as a joke. That's being taken as a very serious matter. And I'm hoping that that means that we're making strides, but we still don't know yet. The problem is it's still only been like a couple of months, and I don't know if it's going to last. I really, really don't. But I think that that's the best example of the fact that it's like this whole idea of blacklisting is not at all an old-timey situation. Like when John Boyega says he's worried he may not work again, like that is legit.
Very real. Very, very, very real. And it's also the gaslighting of people of color, that when you say, like, imagine hypothetically, let's say I go in the middle of La Brea and have this huge protest, and I say something that I'm afraid I'll never work again. People love to be like, oh, it's all in your head. That's not true, because they have the privilege to think that. They've never experienced that. But gaslighting is real. And also a blacklisting, as I said earlier, it goes from being overt to covert. It goes from being blatant to very clandestine and like microaggressed behaviors that people don't get to see, but the higher ups are like, how can we enact a revenge plan against so and so? This is all hypothetical when it comes to blacklisting people.
Yeah.
But it's a real thing, and blacklisting, I think that's a behavior that goes beyond the Black community. It's just something that's shitty in Hollywood.
Oh yeah, we've seen it across communities. I mean, I know when you brought up the Me Too movement, that has been the party line of, oh, this woman is difficult, so don't work with her. No, actually, this woman was sexually harassed or sexually assaulted by a predator, and now you're trying to say that she's a problem. She's not a problem. The system's the problem. And I did want to say too that the reason why we focus particularly on the Black community, we actually did make a concerted effort to not make this a full analysis of diversity, and we did that because of the moment and the movement and how important it is. We just didn't want to be too broad, I guess is what I'll say. It's probably a better way of framing it. We didn't want to be too broad and try and lump everybody in together, because that just leads to more of the othering that is already the problem in the system. So we wanted to, in this particular story, spotlight the Black community. But it does need to be argued that this is not just an issue for Black people, Indigenous people, people of color, just people of color in general face this same kind of adversity. But we just had to try and like narrow the lane as much as we could to try and be as impactful as possible.
And you guys absolutely did that. It was a very nuanced piece of work. I've read it 5 times already.
Oh,
and every time,
thank you.
You know, I gotta do my research, but I mean, from the day it dropped, was a very heated time in humanity. So everything just seemed to really permeate deeply. And when you're reading about your own experience, especially working in this business, it resonates even that much more. Going forward, you had mentioned that in conversations we had, you had mentioned that there's other things in the works in regards to highlighting Black excellence in Hollywood. Tell us about that.
Absolutely. So we do have more stories in the works, kind of deeper diving into some of these issues and some of the things that people are bringing up, Black entertainers in particular are bringing up, and things we want to explore. But in particular, I am co-hosting a series for Variety called #Represent, which was the brainchild of our news anchor, Audrey Yap. And we have the first edition of that, which was done for Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month in May. And it featured all of these great actors and creators. And Audrey, that's on our YouTube and Variety.com now. And shortly this week, we will be doing a second installment that will be highlighting Black men in Hollywood. And I can't wait for everyone to see that conversation because it was really powerful. I've got to say the best part about this whole time for me has been all of my work has been therapy.
Yeah.
Like, it has been
Wow.
truly therapeutic getting to talk to people about their experiences and really just really also work through it myself, because
Mm-hmm.
you know, as a person in the industry, as journalists, we still also deal with these things and these kinds of, you know, moments of being gaslit and these moments of being quite honestly discriminated against
Yeah.
in our profession.
Right.
So it's
Daily.
really nice, literally daily. So it's really nice to be able to talk to people about like my hair struggles and like the different things that come up as a Black person, especially trying to work on camera in this industry.
Sorry,
No,
they're blow drying leaves. I think
that's
for
what always happens. It's always like a leaf blower, and you're
or
like, well,
a
relax.
semi, I know, or a plane. In the comments, they're saying hashtag represent awesome. Shout out to Ivan Carlton. Hey, they're super excited. Official Alex B loving this conversation. And Angelique, that first, congrats on all the content and my weed blower, and all of the great things you have coming down the pike. I mean, you have become this hub of just Black excellence. You know, like you pivoted from entertainment, and you're still doing entertainment, but you're doing entertainment with the social consciousness and a responsibility. Your journey to becoming Angelique Jackson now, becoming someone who's sought after in the
Oh.
business. How like is the air different up there?
Well, I'm not up anywhere, but I wish. But no, it's been really wonderful. It's been really wonderful to feel like I can use my voice and use my platform. Because actually, that's what I realized. That's what I realized during this time was how important my platform was at Variety.
Mm,
And you know, as we are diversifying at that particular outlet, you know, I am one of the few journalists of color, but I can't let that be something that deters me or something that you know, we get nervous about being pigeonholed into only
right.
telling Black stories. We're like, okay, I'm the only one, so am I going to be the
Mm-hmm.
one that has to do all the Black stuff? And I had to look at it in a different way as being like, one, I'm honored to do all the Black stuff, but also two, that gives Black people who wouldn't necessarily have had an entry point in to a Variety a greater chance because I'm there. So I want to use my job, my platform, my whatever I can as my activism. Because I may not be out there in the streets, but I can use my pen. I can use our site and find a way to, you know, promote these stories and continue these conversations. Because at the end of the day, that's the most important thing, is that it stays a conversation. You know,
Right.
I don't want to
Yes.
like stay too much on any one side, but these stories need to be told and they need to be amplified so we can talk about it. We
Right.
have to talk about this stuff.
It's normal. You mentioned being othered earlier, and I think my fear is that, you know, right now we're at a fever pitch, and right now we're hyper aware, we're hypersensitive, we're hyper involved, we're hyper present in what is happening, and I won't say it's attacking us, but it's coming at us so strongly every day from so many different that it's hard to right now escape it, which is a good
Yeah.
thing. You got to go through it to get through it. But my fear is that January 2021, this time next year, the conversations have died down, and people's thought processes have returned back to their old habits of, oh, well, it was a moment. Like people said that about me too, and time's
Yeah.
up. It was a moment in time. No, it cannot be a moment. It needs to be a normalized way of life. And
Yeah.
so having the responsibility with great power comes great responsibility, having the responsibility and the power to continually tell those stories in the long run is a blessing. I just hope that it doesn't become something that when we return, when we emerge from quarantine,
Quarantine.
because through
Yes.
all we're still dealing with a pandemic. When we emerge from this, that we are well versed and still so present in the importance of this movement and how we can also, and look, yes, it's Black Lives Matter, it's about Blackness, but you know, we can apply those fundamentals to just humanity and being better to
Yes.
people, you know, and people,
Yes.
and I hope people can see that as well, because just don't be a shitty person
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
the running theme, right?
Exactly. It's, you've got to look out for each other. We've got to be kinder to each other. We have to have more compassion for each other. I hope that that's what most people are learning in their work in learning how to be more anti-racist and not just, you know, to be actively anti-racist. I hope that that's what people are getting from this, because that's really the goal. That's the point, is to put yourself in other people's shoes and try and understand how they're feeling, because no, you're never going to know what it's like to be Black in America, but you can at least try to imagine what it's like, or at least, you know, we grew, like the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, being colorblind was so cool. And I think we've learned how much that set us back. It's why a show like Little Fires Everywhere, I think, is so incredible, because it forces us to really look at that in a way that even in the book couldn't really be analyzed, because Celeste Ng didn't make, you know, Mia and Pearl Black. But by making Kerry Washington the star and making it, like, putting it in your face and having those monologues where she's telling Reese that she didn't make good choices, she had good choices. I was like, people are gonna, like, those things make people get it, because it has to be in your face, as often as possible. And I have that same fear. Like, it can't be a moment. It's got to be a movement. We can't. It's the big reason why I've kept my foot on the gas personally for me as much as I have, is because I'm like, the microphone can get ripped away at any time. Something else can happen. Everyone's attention can get shifted. We got to put forth as much groundwork as we can right now, because we might not have this moment forever. So we gotta go. We gotta make this happen, Jason.
Yeah, you gotta strike while the iron's hot. I don't know if it's been coined yet, but I think what you just said is so on the money, and just like has sat with me just right now in this instance, that this can't be a moment. It has to be a movement. Hashtag that on a t-shirt right now, Angelique, because truer words haven't been spoken in a while. It cannot be a moment. It has to be a movement. And I couldn't agree more. You are doing incredible work. It's so awesome to see you be in a position and doing the work you're doing and knowing your history and how hard you work, and to now you are being seen, you're being lauded, you're being heralded, and you're being respected, and you're being loved, and you're being cherished for what you're doing. So thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Please don't make me cry, but thank you, because, you know, I could not be more honored and honestly pleased that Variety has given me these opportunities as well, because, you know, I've only been there a little more than a year, and these are goals that I didn't even set for myself. But when they recognized that I had a voice and wanted to be so open about these things, because also, let's be honest, Jason, I was not someone who liked to talk about race. I was not comfortable with it, because it's something that, you know, like we said, when you do, you open yourself up to all kinds of different things. So it was like, cool, we're just gonna, like, keep our head down, do our thing, move along, you know, support where I can, but, like, it's not gonna be my whole existence at work, because it is my whole physical existence anyway. And when I made the choice to speak up about, you know, how I was feeling about the moment, I was so encouraged by the way it was received by my colleagues, and already how much faith they had in me as a reporter, but just, like, how sensitive they have been to understanding how tough this moment is right now, because it's not easy for anybody. But I'm so, like, by you, by, like, my mentors in the journalism community, all of these Black people I just see out here just, like, hustling and, like, going to work every day. I forgot to mention that earlier. Omar Jimenez going back to work that day. After he got out of police custody, got me to go to work.
It's you know, it's Angelique. What that is, and Roxy Diaz, who's a huge fan of yours, says,
"We
amen.
love you, Roxy. Hi.
We stand Rock." Omar Jimenez is the quintessential, clear as day, no kind of filter, opaqueness example of resilience. And the resiliency that people of color are imbued with, either by their strong Black mothers, their abuelitas, their family, you name it, their experiences. We bleed resilience. And especially when it comes to something we're passionate about, we could, you know, that meme of where someone's laying in the bed in a full body cast, and your boss says, "Are you coming into work today?" That's we would find a way to hobble into work because we're passionate about what we do. So Omar Jimenez getting up and being like, "Okay, thank you for this pit stop." You know, the marathon continues.
Exactly.
Is
That
found
right there.
in resiliency. And you have that yourself. I know you got a busy day. I'll let you go. But before I let you go, I always like to ask my guests this question because I think it gets them to think about who they are, and it's an opportunity for them to spread their essence into the universe. Someone comes up to Angelique Jackson, all you've been through, everything you've done, and says, Angelique, right now in 2020, in this moment right now, who would you say you are as a woman? What would you say is at the fiber of your being?
I would say that I am a woman who is learning the power of her voice, learning the power of her experience, that just wants to bring awareness to the world. I want to bring more empathy and more awareness to the world. Those are my life goals, just day to day outside of my job, and those are my goals in my job. Like I want people to feel seen, the same way that I want to feel seen.
Yeah, and you know what, honey, the spotlight, you are so seen. You are 2020 vision, boo. Don't even worry, girl. It has been an honor and a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.
I love and adore you. I cherish you. I think you're incredible, and just keep on doing the great work. You guys watching, head on over to Variety.com. The article is "The State of Black in Hollywood." Also, #representation on Variety.com is coming down. And Angelique, all the best, girl. Keep on killing them.
Thank you. You too. I'm so proud of you. You have built this from the ground up because you are so fantastic and so talented. And I can't wait to see what is next for you. And, as usual, be rooting you on.
Boom, boom, boom. I appreciate that, girl. I received that. You go and have a great day, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Mwah.
Mwah.